All right.
So, last time we were speaking about touch and some other things, and you said that, well, we spoke a bit of, at the end about, uh, I guess, spiritual language, which I think I can safely say is a common thing that is confusing for people. They don't really know how to approach that when they see you talk about this. And we discussed via email that you could maybe try to talk about touch without so much using that language.
Yes.
Just as an experiment, I suppose, to see if it's
The the essence of continuous music is really very complicated, and it's so strange because it, it's not just a new world of piano music. Like the end result of the type of music that the piano plays. It's also a whole new world of a pianist. The pianist himself or herself is a completely different being and concept from uh, everything that people have understood as a pianist or as a piano player. So it's really something totally new and needs to be spoken about and examined in very, very many ways. Uh, this aspect of the touch, for example, uh, is one that's very important, but that's actually a side product of being a continuous pianist. Let me explain that the uh, the constant, I would say, view or concept of a pianist, the constant concept that is with everybody. By the way, Nathan, I get a lot of noise from your end. I guess it's going to become like it comes in through me, but I don't know if you're picking it up.
can you
I don't think I don't know if I can get it away, but okay.
that's probably my fault.
I don't know if it's coming through, uh, but my microphone will pick that up. You know, um, I I don't know if you're hearing that, but there's all these sort of noises going on. But uh, anyway, hopefully we can chop that little part out and go back to the concept. This constant. Okay, I'll start again. This constant concept of what a pianist is really very different from the continuous world. Uh, People have understood the pianist as somebody who can play a concerto or a sonata or can play these everything else, rock or jazz or pop music and everything, and that's all uh, lumped really together because basically it's very true that all of those different types of music basically use the same technique of the pianist. And so it's simply an ability that the pianist achieves to be able to play the pieces. So let me uh, draw an analogy. It would be something, for example, of, I don't know, um, a circus, uh, you know, doing tricks on the trapeze or something, or not necessarily, but sort of balancing plates or this sort of thing. And so you change the trick, and you do instead of balancing plates, you might be balancing some coffee cups or something. But uh, basically, what you're doing is uh, getting ability to juggle or to do these fantastic tricks uh, of balancing and stuff like that. So uh, that is the world of the pianist as well. You learn to do these tricks, this sonata, this concerto, etc. And of course, it's a very high achievement. It's very extremely high development of a person. However, all of these things that the person can do not change you. They do not require a new mind. They do not require a new body. Uh, Nothing is altered within you, and so this is basically the major and first step that a human being takes in entering the world of continuous piano playing. Is that you have to understand that you're not learning to be able to play a piece. What you're learning or achieving is the ability of the mind to maintain these things. And this energy, which comes from this ability, also changes everything within you. You don't become a different person, but you have a much more expanded mind and an expanded body. So if we, this is where continuous music is somewhat similar to the martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that the martial artist is not achieving the fantastic things that he or she does. The martial artist is developing himself to be able to do those things, which have basically no meaning and no definition. So this needs explanation as well, because the martial artist is not learning to make a specific movement. However, a classical pianist or another, regular type pianist, a non-continuous pianist, is learning to do a specific movement, a specific thing with the hands and fingers, etc. This the martial artist does not do. What he does is develop his mind, his soul, his body, enabled to achieve not this motion, but any motion at all. If you can understand that difference, it's an enormous difference. And it's also one of, uh, this is very important for people to realize that unlike classical training, where you're learning to do a more difficult piece, a more difficult piece, you're learning to do the pieces. And so, in the end, you can play a lot of stuff, and you can play the piano very well, but not supremely. If you want to be able to play the piano supremely, then you have to change things, because the supreme playing, as in continuous music, involves a union, a very mystical union between the player, the piano, and the music. And this involves the player's soul. This involves the player's mind, everything. And so, uh, while this might sound frightening to people, it's really not. You you have to trust in yourself that uh, continuous music will simply provide you, the individual, with an expanded you. It's not going to change you.
Mm.
It's simply going to give you Instead of having, for example, two arms, you'll have four. And instead of having one head, you'll have six heads or something like that. But they're all you. However, they all multiply what you can do. So, in a sense, continuous music is a multiplier of the individual, and not really in numbers, as I sort of described earlier. It's not that there's two of you or something, but it multiplies and intensifies your being, the individual person.
So, what I think would be necessary is for any potential student. I mean, it's been necessary for me, and I think for anyone else, is to come to a statement like when you talk about the energy, that there has to be an appropriate way to understand that, and maybe we could try and talk about what we mean by this energy. Although it's very difficult, we could try to talk about it somehow
It's
in
it,
with reference to more concrete things. So,
I don't know if that's possible, because
mm,
it's trying to describe light to someone who's blind.
mm,
So one has to experience it, uh, and it's probably better that I don't speak of it in terms of a specific concrete thing, because it's it's simply part of the pianist. Uh, the the power that the pianist develops as a continuous pianist far outshines anything in the piano world that has ever existed before. The power of you is phenomenal, and none of that power is used in piano playing until you become a continuous pianist, and suddenly the power will come.
mhm,
So it's this energy is again a one aspect of a very complex thing. So it in itself, this energy can be felt in the hands. Uh, I don't really feel it now because uh, I've lived with it, for 50 years now. So my hands are sort of basically constantly in this state. But I do remember being quite consciously aware of this energy in the early days and early years of continuous playing. This energy flowing through the hands, and um, it's quite yeah, one can feel it. I was going to say tangible, but that's not the right verb. It's the adjective. But um, this I bring all of these things up because we were talking about the touch, and I believe that I mentioned already before that the touch is not something one should strive for as you're going through learning or developing yourself as a continuous pianist, so that the touch is something that will simply come automatically, so that the continuous pianist is not striving to achieve uh, a, a phenomenal uh, uh, what's the word, palette, I suppose, of touches. If one thinks of a painter's palette with
mhm,
colors on it, uh, and the classical pianists really have very few. This is one of the things that uh, could be quite criticized, is that they have far too little sense of touch in them. It's more about just being loud and being audible, and then sort of loud, soft, etc., etc. That they're very well aware of. They can play softly, but there's thousands of ways of playing softly and different degrees, and they don't bother about it, mainly because their music does not require it. Like, you don't You don't have time, for one thing, when you're playing a piano sonata. You don't have time to kind of uh, develop your hand movement into a certain touch. You can just approximate, sort of like it should be soft, it should be louder, etc. That it's it's part of the nature of the music you're playing, that it doesn't require and doesn't give you, it doesn't not only not require, but it does not give you the the that opportunity to sense all these different touches that you can have. And so they're not developed, and the hand remains oblivious to them. The continuous pianist, on the other hand, has time, lives with the piano, lives with the keyboard, is joined to the keyboard. And so, in a sense, you're kissing the keyboard. And it's all these different things that the fingers can do in the way they touch, and there's very very small nuances in the sound, slightly, like if you're playing a row of notes, but and you change the touch slightly mentally, and it's not the same as changing the touch for a classical pianist, which is very very rough and very basic. This is, we're talking about a new dimension of touch that pianists do not are not aware of, and in this dimension you can change things, and a machine may not be able to um, verify a change. For example, your thermometer, if you had one, and it says like 19.6 uh, centigrade, and uh, you change the temperature, but it still shows 19.6 because the machinery cannot keep up with the tremendous possibilities that continuous pianist has in the touch. So uh, you're playing this note, and you change. I guess one could say that you change the picture of the touch. It's somewhat shorter, somewhat more detached, but that's it's almost indescribable. But the sound will change. You will hear that the piano will suddenly be plinking something. There will be a change in each sound from each tone. So it's quite a new world too that becomes open to the pianist. And
So when you're focusing on the touch, are you imagining, are you holding pictures in your mind, or
no, no,
ideas of what it should sound like?
but sometimes uh, not necessarily in a concert, but even in concert that can happen. But for example, playing at home, or for example, you while you're practicing might s- decide to change how your hand feels and how the fingers are moving. Uh, but this becomes more and more uh, possible as you develop as a continuous pianist. So one grows as a pianist. One grows in one's ability to transfer uh, thought through your fingers and have your fingers make the thinking and doing for you. So um, the this what I spoke about with the martial arts is both uh, perhaps a dangerous concept because it may generate some false ideas in people's minds about continuous music. But I do know for sure that there is a similarity in the physical and spiritual and mental state of the continuous pianist with that of the martial arts. So in a sense you could call me basically a student of martial arts because I'm not a master of them and never will be. But I am um, I am touching their world from with my piano world, and I see that, especially in kung fu, there is a tremendous speeding up of the brain to do to do 1,000 times faster what the normal brain does, and uh, so uh, this is not evident particularly in the early stages of playing continuous music, but as you develop and into the higher and higher stages of playing, um, the the sense of time can be drastically uh, altered as you're playing, and a sensitivity to time and to things becomes greatly enhanced. So that when people see, there is a film which for me is defines the true nature of kung fu, and there's a Chinese film called Hero, and there, if you watch it, you must believe. Do not even believe, just understand and know that this is possible. This is reality. And then you wonder, how is it possible? Ah, it's possible because the mind and the soul and the body of the Kung Fu master, as portrayed in the movies, is happening at 1,000 times faster than what people normally do. And this enables them to do these miraculous, wonderful things. How is it possible? Because of time. Because they, without striving to achieve some specific movement, they are developing day by day the growth of them as a human being. So this growth results in this phenomenal time change. I don't know how to describe it, and it's not permanent. It's not as though it's for me. Anyway, I don't know. I can't speak for the kung fu masters, but for me, this time thing will occur simply like at the points where I need it or where it's happening. For example, I'm playing in concert or something. It can happen in private piano playing as well, but it's not something that's permanent. It's not as though all day long my mind is, working at this phenomenal high speed. It's just when I want to or need to, or maybe God decides, okay, now is the time, and you doing that. I mean, it's not really my decision, but just to be very clear, so that people don't think that they're going to go from breakfast to bedtime at 1,000 with their brain operating at this super speed. Uh, this uh, I, I feel a bit that I'm on dangerous ground here speaking about this type of stuff because people I don't, or people might feel that, oh, I want to also be able to whatever I was describing. Oh, so I'm going to become I'll study continuous piano just so I can become, this thing. No, this is not the reason. You cannot desire to learn continuous music so that you have these kind of extraordinary abilities. You must desire to be a pianist for only one reason, and that is to create this beautiful music. To create this beautiful music involves all of this stuff that I've been talking about. But the goal has never been, oh, uh, uh, self development or, like it's, there can be no other goal except to have you grow so that you can create this beautiful music with using the piano. And so, I hope I've.
Another dangerous thing that occurs to me is that while there might be some people thinking, okay, you said you made a joke about going from bedtime, from waking up until bedtime at this very high speed. I think more people will be just very skeptical of this in general, and I think people at the early stages, maybe they're playing the meditations like I was, and then they're waiting for this. Oh, when does this funny sense of touch come? When does this sense of time come? And they're this is a difficult thing to grapple with. It was for me. There's a lot of patience required, and like a beginning student might be quite skeptical just from doing meditations that this other stuff is happening or can happen. And I've got my personal answer to this because I went through it, but maybe it would be good for you to give a response to that.
Well, that's very difficult to formulate right on the spot now. I really understand your point here, um, but this is the problem about talking about something so new and so phenomenal as continuous music. Um, on the one hand, I want to explain the glorious aspects of the music. And now, again, we're seeing that perhaps people mm, may, for the wrong reason, want to study and become a continuous pianist. Uh, it's true that, for example, Zen masters and Kung Fu and, Buddhists and that don't talk about the uh, beautiful things that they experience because of their choice to become a Buddhist monk or a Zen monk, or I mean, for example, even to become a priest or something. There is also some, I think, some very, very beautiful and wonderful things that come to the human being through this choice. And uh, I do. I'm talking about these things that perhaps I should not be talking about, only out of desperation, because uh, this ability and this beauty that I speak of uh, has a serious risk of disappearing from the earth. The Tibetan monks and the Buddhists and the Zen monks do not have that worry. They have their temples and they have their students, and they're well known. And people, uh, there's thousands of people seriously pursuing that road. It's a very beautiful road, and it's you know uh, in no danger of disappearing. At least at this point of time. Whereas my music is almost guaranteed to disappear from the face of the earth once I've died. So that is why I'm trying to do a sort of a used car salesman. I mean, that's I shouldn't say that because I'm actually very serious about it, so I shouldn't make a joke on it. But I'm trying to basically uh, convince people to try this wonderful piano music and see if indeed they would like to uh, pursue it and to grow with this music and with their piano. Uh, I, I I don't know if we can achieve this, but I think it's possible, and I'm both afraid that what I've said or will say at some point will frighten people away and make them say, "Oh no, I don't want to get involved with that stuff." With that piano playing, because it all sounds so very strange and otherworldly. Um, but on the other hand, maybe it's time people should begin to crawl out of this ridiculous imprisonment of scientific, realistic thinking. Uh, that people should realize that, oh, do not be afraid of the spiritual because you're surrounded in it, you're walking on it, you're breathing it, you're eating it. Everything, every second of your life, you are drowning in the spiritual. You just don't know it. So, why be afraid of it? Why? It's not as though they're going to lose the pleasures of being a human being. You don't lose something by becoming a continuous pianist or a kung fu master or a tai chi master. You lose nothing. You have everything that you want, that's normal, that you would have done anyway. But you have something wonderful in addition. And that's what I'm trying to offer people is this wonderful thing, to be able to sit down at a piano and make the piano come alive with your fingers and singing with this beautiful sound and this music. So, anyway.
But I suppose my question was more that the student definitely can experience wonderful things. I have, but it does take, at least in my experience, it does take rather a lot of time. So I've always been quite dedicated to work with you, but my I've had doubts at various times. My motivation has wavered at various times because I would be practicing these things for a long, long time, many, many weeks or months, and I wouldn't be conscious of an improvement, and I would start to worry if maybe it's not working for me or something. Now, like I said, I have my own response to this, but I think maybe one of them want something which is more off-putting to people is that how to say, like the meditations seem easy to people who've done piano before because it seems like there's not much going on in the notes, and then everything else is too difficult. And I think if you don't have the right mindset, then and you're playing the meditations, you might like not notice certain improvements, and you might wonder, well, Lubomir talked about these nice things, but I can't see them.
Oh, yeah, those nice things uh, are uh, come with as you rise and you become better and better. Your level of abilities, of your mental and uh, growth. This they come later. They're not going to come just from playing these simple meditations. The the meditations are there basically to get the pianist started in the basic process, mental process of it. So uh, these things I speak of come as you develop over years. Um, so, for example, what I spoke about uh, did not happen in the first uh, few years of continuous playing. For example, the arpege, the ability to do arpege did not come. It took 20 years for me to be able to do arpege. And I had no idea that I mean, it was very important. Like, you cannot strive to do arpege work. You have to strive to simply develop yourself. Eventually, you will discover that suddenly you can do arpege. But it took my body and my mind 20 years to reach that level where suddenly one day I could do it. The idea came of involving this. So, if you speak about, oh, I've been playing for 2 or 3 years, etc. So, um, after 2 or 3 years, I don't know if uh, the speed of the mind will come, but it takes a long time. I've described now. Uh, I think a lot about the differences of the continuous pianist and the world of continuous music. So let's try to keep. Maybe next time we can talk about um, some other aspects in that. If people aren't too worried about things, I just hope that uh, people will see this as a very worthwhile world of their for their piano playing.
Last time we started off talking about touch, but then the conversation went in various places. We'll try to get back to that again today, but just before today's discussion started, we were talking about how, or Lubomir was talking about how 20 years ago, a lot of the great things he's experienced, he had not experienced. And so he speaks of quite extraordinary things because it's taken him very many years to find them, and so they really are quite extraordinary and non-obvious for other people or the beginning continuous pianist. And then I just said, and I'll now say this again on camera, that sometimes I think sometimes the spiritual or more extraordinary language can be hard to understand, but sometimes it can be helpful. And so I strongly recommend that anyone who wants to study this music seriously, you even if you find the way I speak in my articles or you find the way Lubomir speaks a little unusual, it it's good to be patient with it. It can help. So there is this book, Open Time, which was privately published, written by Lubomir in the 80s, I think. And I am very lucky to have a copy, and I read it for some 3 weeks last year. And I wasn't doing any piano practice, I just read it. And then when I returned to playing the piano, immediately it was much better. All the exercises that I were doing, much better. And reading this book, the book is at times very philosophical, at times spiritual, at times maybe incoherent, but there's a lot of meaning in this language, and kind of trying to put yourself in that mindset, or language does affect our thoughts, right? And the way you phrase things and the way you think about things affects the way you play as well. This is what we were saying.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing with continuous music and something which you brought up here, that when you had taken a break from playing the piano and came back, uh, uh, everything had changed in your hands and fingers and in your mind. And uh, I think this was partially because you had delved into continuous music by reading the book. But I think there's also another facet of continuous music itself, that uh, when you go away from the piano, your abilities increase. So it's actually uh, another enormous difference between this piano music and being a classical pianist. That the classical pianist, to achieve something, uh, a difficult section, uh, continues to repeat, and train the fingers to do it and train to do it because that's the nature of the notes that are being played. You have to eventually get the fingers to achieve this gymnastics. Continuous music, there are no gymnastics. Instead, there is a flow, and that flow uh, gets controlled from a deep place within you. And so, when you're away from the piano, this can actually develop, even though you're not practicing. But your ability to control and be sensitive to this place within you where you're controlling the flow, that will grow even when you're not at the piano. And I know that I can say absolutely that if one finds something really difficult, something in the playing, uh, bashing your head against the wall like continuously, like working on it for an hour or something, will not help at all and probably just make it worse. So in continuous music, when you reach something that is not quite working, the best thing to do is step away and come back to it in a little bit of time. And suddenly you'll find that suddenly you can do it. This is I think one of the wonderful things about continuous music is this ability that we get really better by not sitting at the piano practicing all day long. So
Yeah, and the point you made about uh, most traditional forms of piano music, mostly being, well, most of the difficulty comes from the gymnastics versus continuous music not having any gymnastics at all. This is a very significant difference. So, I was never that good at classical piano, but I could play some pieces. I could also play some Philip Glass, etc. Since looking at this music, I find myself very much unable to do pieces I could do before because although they're easy in terms of no, there's no great finesse that you need, the way they're written is just so fundamentally different. I play something, then there's a pause, then there's an unnatural jump of some two octaves, then there's an unnatural one octave chord stretch in the hand, then there's some other random thing you do, then some other random thing that you do. And it's very beautiful, but it's a sequence of short random things. But every single piece, at least every single piece I've seen so far of yours that you've written, I find that you can just do it. You don't need to do like everything is natural for the hand. It's maybe even something that you could have guessed. It's the pieces are much easier to remember because it is all just natural flow. There's no surprising jumping or weird pausing or anything like this. The mindset of the pieces is very different, and I guess for now, since you're the only person composing these pieces, this is just the reference. It'd be interesting to see if in future you can have continuous pieces with different kind of composition. But um, even your normal pieces, let's say like Evertina, I like to play Evertina, and although it's written like a classical piece, there's just something about the way that you've done it means that still all the motions are very natural and it feels good for the hand in a way that I can't explain. But there's a very serious difference there.
this is a very important facet of continuous music is that it's so natural to the hand and actually quite easy to play. And it it seems difficult in the beginning, but once you can do it, it's something like juggling, which is pretty hard to do, even let's say with three balls or two balls, until your mind can do it, and then you do it. So I think if you ask someone who does juggling, if you did try to learn yourself to do it, uh, you would find very similar. The mind simply enters a state of controlling the flow, and so while it is initially difficult, once your mind is able to do it, then it's very easy. And uh, so the pieces are not that difficult to play at all, actually, even the advanced ones, because uh, the advanced ones one needs to approach quite step by step, so that my first principle is that uh, you progress from piece to piece, and there should not be a huge jump, difficulty in them. So every step you take should be quite small and quite easy. Fundamentally, this is very important, so that uh, the mind does not struggle with something that's difficult, because right away the difficulty is uh, magnified. It's and this is the same thing with mathematics or studying anything. As soon as we reach something difficult, or that seems difficult, it becomes enormously magnified in the mind. And um, so something, I mean, uh, I know that you are studying the wonderful world of mathematics. And if you think of Fermat's great revelation, it's so obvious and so easy that any child could have thought of it, could have realized it. Any child who knows algebra anyway. Like, I mean, maybe, and the thing is that mathematicians have perceived it as an extremely difficult, impossible, complex problem, and it's not. And the same thing in music, or in continuous music. You will perhaps come to something to do that is really, really unmanageable. And so all that means is not that you cannot do it. It means you cannot do it now, just now, and that the jump is too big. For example, one should perceive continuous music as coming to uh, a spot in the road. You're walking, and there's a little gap in the sidewalk, and you step over it, and you keep going. However, as you go, the gap keeps getting bigger and bigger. Now, the marvelous thing is that the technique teaches you to be able to leap. So, for example, like supposing the gap started at being just 5 inches or 6 inches, which is nothing to step over, and then suddenly it's becoming 2 feet. Well, actually, I guess let's say uh, a half, like more than a half meter. Oh, it's a little bit harder now. Suddenly, but the technique is giving you the ability in your legs and your feet and your body to leap over this half meter. And then you're going, and then later on, it's 70 centimeters. Yeah. You jump over it with quite ease. Now, supposing you going on, then suddenly you have 4 meter jump. There's no sidewalk. There's a chasm below you. You come to the edge, and the next and the cliff, the other side is 4 meters away. No way. So this is where you have to grow into the ability, so that you start with a jump that's one, then one and a half, or 1.6, or 1.8, then two, then 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. You keep building up until you come to that same point where it's 4 meters. Suddenly, you can just leap over without any problem. You're not worried or terrified or fearful. So this is how continuous music needs to be taught, needs to be learned, and it's also uh, uh, quite uh, quite different from yeah from the classical training too as well because I found it quite uh, depressing with segments of a sonata that I found I couldn't do, or some little flurry in Chopin that I had terrible trouble doing, or something, you know. And um, there was that uh, what do you call it? Rachmaninoff's one of his preludes where the left hand is doing five notes and the right hand is doing four, or vice versa. I can't remember. And I was just dying trying to make this work because you're trying to do it mathematically, trying instead of just simply, of course, letting it happen, which is it's not hard at all. But anyway, so this is one of the things that is also kind of a thing about leaving the piano and coming back to it. That suddenly this jump that was so difficult, suddenly becomes quite easy. But I heard the analogy of uh, yes, you
No,
can.
I was just gonna say that, yeah, in my experience, once I know a piece, it becomes very easy, and I can't. I remember it feeling difficult, but I can't remember why or how. Like let's take Pockets of Light. For a long time, it would make the thumb in my left hand hurt, and just wasn't quite right. But thought, once I really could say that I could do it, nothing. And you could do it when you're completely exhausted or when you're extremely focused, and it can be done.
This is this is very uh, important point related to what you say about the fact that you had trouble, like like your thumb in this case, but it could be another finger was feeling bad. As you're playing it, there's this tension and a kind of pain that grows up because that finger is not really working uh, correctly. And I have found myself, and I think you did too, when you started Cloud Passat. But Cloud Passat, even for me, Nathan, I experienced exactly the same thing that you did. Uh, I found Cloud Passat physically quite demanding and difficult on my hands. Very, and I don't know. Just one day, I sat down, and suddenly my hands didn't. It's not that I could play it; I could play it before, but suddenly my hands were making no trouble at all. In fact, it was just they were breezing through the playing, just as you experienced it, right? And this is something quite marvelous about continuous music is that uh, a lot of the problems, like in playing something, come from uh, something inside the hand somewhere. I mean, it's very complex, and so there's a lot of tendons, sinews, bones, a lot of flesh and muscles and everything, uh, and they're all working. And when the hand is not managing something, like feeling a lot of tension or some pain, or as you were saying, like your thumb was hurting, it's not because um, you have you're playing badly. Problem is, it's a physical problem in your hand. It's sort of like uh, driving a car and one of the wheels has 30% less air than it needs, so the car is kind of like off kilt, you know. And so, uh, being the driver, uh, you might think, "Oh, there's something terribly, terribly wrong," but there isn't. All it needs is some readjustment. So in this case, you put more air in the tire, and suddenly the car is floating along at a very, instead of leaning on one side, etc., etc. So the the technique actually works on perfecting the human hand slowly, gradually, um, so that the continuous pianist's hand uh, is quite different from the normal pianist's hand. And the, for example, when I close my fist, there is another power that I can feel. It's a deeper sort of muscular thing that is extremely strong, which I think the classical pianists do not feel because they're still working with the old type of muscles and everything. And so my hands theoretically have are getting, well, they won't be perfect, but they are heading towards perfection, as we all are. You know, we're heading towards perfection. We don't achieve it, but we have it as a goal, and the and so even I find that playing things, practicing does not always help. This is kind of like we're pulling many things together from today, like all together. And in this thing about the the energy of the hand and of continuous playing that gives this energy to the hand and to the person as a pianist. Uh, this energy perfects the hand. It repairs, or it real. It repairs. It definitely repairs damage, and it also realigns things inside the hand, so that eventually these problems disappear, like this painful thumb of yours, and the difficulty doing cloud passade, etc. And I mean, and this seems to be an almost an eternal thing for me. Like for example, Sacred Thousand, which is only 2 years old. It's not an old piece, and I had tremendous trouble. Even though I've been playing it, and even with the workings of it before, it's more than 2 years because I was already working on it 3 years ago, like the initial stock. But the right hand is in three note form, and the right hand is supposed to be in 3/4 rhythm, not 6/8, not triplets, but 3/4 rhythm. And if you think that you can play for half an hour and maintain a 3/4 rhythm, I could not. It was impossible. I was just like struggling sometimes. Get into the 3/4. Get out of this triplets. I can't get out of the triplets. It's just like you get locked in. You're a prisoner in the 3/4, the triplet cell of the the prison in heaven of triplets. And so it was, I don't know, but suddenly, not from practicing, but actually just you come to the concert, you sit down and you start playing it, and suddenly my right hand is able to do the whole half hour, the whole piece in 3/4 rhythm, and so easily without sweating or working on it. It's just doing it, and so this shows that both um, this realignment inside the hand, inside the body, inside the mind can happen even when you're not playing, which is which is really nice because I don't think it happens that if you have trouble playing a Chopin piano concerto and there's few bars that are really your fingers are having a real hard time. I don't know if you really achieve it by not practicing, but in continuous music, somehow the the actual technique or the energy of playing it seems to work inside the body even when you're not playing the piano.
But you also wouldn't achieve something universal. So when I make progress, like my mindset improves, or something, just something about the way I play your pieces improves, it then applies to every single other piece
Yeah,
uniformly. Um, Um,
And
so what was I going to say?
wait, wait,
So
wait,
you go ahead.
wait. Oh, okay. No, because this relates to exactly what you said precisely now. Because this was a thought I had early on in our talk, and I dropped it because I was talking about something else, and I now that what you say has brought it back. That it was a very very clear thought that the amazing thing with continuous music is that unlike classical music or other stuff. Uh, Classical music, you meant to progress. You play more difficult stuff, and you almost never go back and play the easiest thing. Almost never, because you don't learn from them. You learn by by doing harder and harder things. That's I mean, it's not wrong. That's the nature of it. It's not that it's the wrong way to teach. It is the right way to teach because it's the way you need to learn to be able to do classical music. You have to keep trying to get harder and harder things. In continuous music, however, uh, it is both good to advance, play somewhat harder. But in relation to what you said now, when you said that your new mindset, your new feeling in your hands affects everything that you play, not just cloud facade, but everything that you play after that has changed because your hands have changed. And so this is what I'm wanting to say that in continuous music, it is very good for the pianist to go back to the absolute very simplest things because the technique is the same. And when you're playing continuous music, you're playing a continuous technique. You're making it live within you and within the piano. So matters not whether you are playing a very high advanced, phenomenal piece, technically phenomenal, or a simple piece. The technique in its original ground is the same. So for to explain that a little bit further, I would draw an analogy of, let's say, we cannot sing. We are monotone. So if the human being were asked, "Would you sing this?" They would say, "La la da 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 da." Okay, all right, that's the singing. However, continuous music says, "Okay, you can do la da 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 da." Ooh, and suddenly you you can do this melodic stuff. Now think of the person who can only do da da la 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 la, one tone, monotone, same pitch all the time. And so they can do now different pitches in singing. That's the beginning of continuous music. But what I'm telling you now is that see this ability to do different tones is then is the ground, and it's the same. It's the essence of when you do. For example, you're going to sing a phenomenal aria of Verdi or Puccini or something from some opera. You know what a spectacular thing compared to just doing da 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 da, simple stuff. But the essence is the fact that before you could not sing at all. You could just do da 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 da, right? Now, so when you're doing this fantastic aria of Puccini, uh, is it really different from being able to do da 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 da. Not really. The ability to change your pitch is the essence of what you're doing as a singer. So from being able to doing nothing, just one tone, suddenly you can change your pitch and do all this stuff. So that's why, uh, even though you can sing these fantastic arias, it's still good to be able to come back and do da 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 because it will also develop you as a singer. So the same way with continuous music, going back to the early meditations, which you probably rarely do, you will find that they are quite valuable because your mind will perceive new things. not so much in the music perhaps, but in yourself, because continuous music is both a development into music, but also development into yourself. So when you play the easy pieces, it's actually very good to do that because you you you, you see new perspectives of yourself, of your own playing. You feel your hand in a new way. You feel your fingers in a new way, even though it's easy.
Yes, and when I've made videos on the meditations before for my YouTube channel, I've had to go back and relearn them, and I have noticed new things. And
Uh-huh.
I've tried to encourage people. I've said exactly what you just said in my videos, that don't be fooled by the fact that the notes are easy. There's still a lot more going on here somehow that you could pay attention to if you wanted to. Um, Something you just
Yeah.
said prompted a thought that I think's worth getting your thoughts on camera. So you've said this a lot, that continuous music is about developing music, but also there's a lot of development of the self, the body, etc. Of course, I completely agree, but at other times you say something which people could perceive as a contradiction. I just want to get this out there. So at times you've
Mhm.
also said things such as you know, you're not playing. There's this quote in your book: "The player who plays to know himself is already at poverty with the world." Um, and for me, these two thoughts are not contradictory, but I think they could be perceived as. So on one hand, continuous music has self-development, but on the other hand, it's not about self-development. Um, Perhaps
Uh,
you could
I
comment on that.
could not. Could you that what you mentioned out of the book? Could you repeat that to me? Because it went really fast and I
Sure.
missed.
The player
Because
who
I can't to hear it more clearly, so I can understand the apparent contradiction here.
so
Yeah.
the quote is, "The player who plays to know himself is already at poverty with the world." Um, and I think you've made a
At
similar comment in one of our earlier
with
discussions. And so the question I'm bringing to you is maybe not a question I need an answer for myself, but maybe just a question needs an answer for in general. Is, on one hand, continuous music is self-development, but on the other hand, you do make it clear that it shouldn't be about
yes,
self-development.
I think that the what you quoted out of the book, uh, I should have added a few extra words right there. For I should have maybe, or even one word or a few words, like for the pianist uh, whose sole or only goal in playing is self development. That's what I should, because that's what I meant. Uh, it's sort of like when you read it to me, then I understood that was the peripheral stuff that's not there. But uh, uh, I realized that someone reading it could would would not understand that there's intended solely for self development. So but this is actually where we left off at the previous podcast, because I think I spoke somewhat about this aspect too. That these things that I describe as one of the beautiful things of being a continuous pianist, they should not be the goal, because I think stated uh, just try to enjoy the beauty of the piano and creating this beautiful music. If you enjoy playing it, that's the most important part, is to make it happen. And the other things, they will come on their own. If they will come at all, they will simply come to to the pianist. And if so, the same thing with this self development. Uh, what I have never for a moment uh, tried to play the piano with the goal of sort of growing as self development. self knowledge or self empowerment or whatever. It was never a goal, and it is only after that one achieves through great devotion to the piano and to the music, like devotion to creating this beauty, and uh, then after that one realizes that oh, I have changed, you know, and but it's wrong to want to do that or to use the music for that purpose. It's uh,
I also think it misguides your practice. So from my experience
yeah,
learning this as someone who is not as good, of course, um, being patient with yourself is far more important than striving for a particular speed or striving for a particular whatever.
yeah, exactly. The speed and your touch and everything, they will grow within you naturally, and you will simply become better and better as you play. But the thought has come now because I do need to leave quite soon. But the thought has come that the next uh, uh, podcast we do, we should talk about uh, the aspect of playing these different patterns, in the left hand and right hand. And because I would like to give people some guidance with this, and you're doing it, and it'd be interesting for you. You could also uh, provide some like your own experience as the one who's been learning to do this, over the years. So uh, let's aim on working on with that from our next time because I think the, uh, the real purpose of our talks is to uh, give people access to this beautiful world of continuous piano. And so it's kind of complex. So I'd like to kind of talk about different aspects of it. And the pattern work is very important. It's very a ground, the ground element of everything. So anyway, if there's nothing left to do, I guess I can thank you for for today.